All right, guys, and welcome back. Now we're going to be doing chapter 15, and that is the real estate market and analysis. Okay, this is going to be a very small chapter, a very short and quick one, nice and painless. There's only going to be one question on the exam from this chapter. So we really only need to know a few terms and a few things, but we'll go ahead and get through that one fairly quickly. Okay. So now, when it comes to the real estate market, there's a few things that we do need to consider. For example, one of the things that they want you to know are the physical characteristics of real estate, okay? Meaning that real estate is an immobile thing, or the immobility of real estate, meaning that you cannot just grab a home or grab a property and take it with you. It is immobile, so that is one of the factors that they want you to know. Also, land is indestructible or durable, meaning that you cannot, although you can chop up and try to excavate land can't really be destructible or destructed. Hence, why is non-depreciable. If you can remember from the tax chapter, we always can't really depreciate land. So that's another feature. And then lastly, real estate is unique, meaning that although two properties could be next to each other and have the same home built in each of them or the same model, they'll never be exactly the same because there's always differences, whether it be the dimensions of the lot, whether it be the actual construction of the properties. They will have some differences, so every property is unique in its true form, even though it might be the same home or the same model of home built on it. Okay? So those are going to be the physical characteristics of real estate. Then we're going to have the economic characteristics of real estate as well, meaning that government influences the market. Now, in our case, and in many people's cases, depending on what the government does, it will have a big influence on the market in itself, such as increasing interest rates, changing the law, and anything in between. Okay? Also, we need to understand about the relationship between supply, demand, and the price. The reason being is, as agents, we're going to have to help the customers decide of many different decisions. And we need to understand what supply means to demand and the price, what an increase and decrease in demand means for the price. Like, for example, if there's a lot of demand, price is going to go up. Which, if there's not enough supply, it will create prices to go even higher. Same thing with demand. If there's not enough demand, what is that going to do? It's going to force sellers to negotiate more, which will cause prices to start coming down. So definitely understand, the differences between supply, demand, and price. Okay. Also, we need to know about how the market is slow to respond to supply and demand. Real estate is an industry that is cyclical, meaning that it goes from buyer's market to seller's market, back to buyer's market to seller's market, and then it cycles. Now, normally, it takes a long period of time to go through those cyclical changes, unless we have something that can influence that cycle, such as the pandemic of 2020. Now, something like that can alter the market and get it to go on a completely flipped and on a frenzy. As we saw, interest rates tanked, or at least interest rate came way down. And what did that cause? That caused millions of people to qualify, which now turned it into an acute seller's market in which now there was not enough properties and tons of buyers, which drove the price way up. Okay? Next, area preferences, or what they call situs. Make sure you know the term situs because that's what they use on the exam. What situs means is that people have a lot of preferences and trends change, and with modernization, globalization, people look for different things. Back in the day, people preferred certain colors, certain styles, certain way of living, versus now people choose all kinds of different things. So we need to make sure that we're aware of that because that could have a big influence in the economics of real estate. Okay? Now we're going to get into specifically supply. Okay? Now supply in essence means for real estate the supply of properties. okay? Now, when it comes to supply, there's variables that will influence supply. And we need to make sure that for the exam, you know these variables. But let's go ahead and look at them from a very ecological standpoint, okay? Now, when it comes to supply, first thing is going to be the availability of skilled labor. So if there is nobody skilled enough to build properties, can we have any supply? Absolutely not. Next, availability of construction loans and financing. Now, unless you're a very rich builder, a lot of builders don't have the means to come out of pocket and go ahead and just build properties. They utilize banks, they utilize funding, so then they can go ahead, build properties on a larger scale, sell them, pay the loans, and keep the profit. But if there's no financing or loans available for a lot of builders to utilize, there can't be that much supply either. And places like Ocala, where it's booming and is the number one place currently to move in the state of Florida, there needs to be financing available for increased supply because a lot of people are moving into the area. Okay? Next, availability of land. If there is no land to build on, what kind of supply do you think we could have? Not much. Okay? And then lastly, availability of materials. If there is no materials, what supply can we have? I mean, it happened during the pandemic years, meaning that during the pandemic, a lot of builders weren't getting their supplies. You know, there was delays in windows, delays in wood, delays in many different things that were needed to build homes. So what did that do? It actually stopped the supply, and it caused prices to continue to rise because as buyers are having 2-3% and are getting great deals, builders cannot complete their properties because the lack of supply on materials, okay? So materials will be another determinant of supply, okay? So those are going to be the 4 determinants or variables of supply, so you just make sure you know those for this exam. And now we're going to move to demand, okay? So the variables that now influence demand. It's going to be the price of real estate, first and foremost, meaning depending on where the price is for property, it will either increase demand or decrease demand. Because if properties are way overpriced, people are not going to be able to buy them, period. Okay? Also, population numbers and household composition. Meaning, if you have an area that is super populated, chances are things will cost more to buy. So if people like a specific area or is very, very popular, the demand is going to increase because everybody's going to want to move into that good area, or for whatever reason, if that area is popular for some reason or another and people want to go there, that'll influence demand. Okay? Income of consumers. Now, depending on people's income and things like inflation and things like that, that will influence demand, because if people per se don't have the means to purchase the homes or keep up with the inflation, demand is going to decrease because nobody can afford to buy homes. Okay? Availability of mortgage credit. Same thing to a certain degree, supply for the builders. In the sense that most people do not have the means to just go out and buy properties cash. They're going to need some sort of financing, and if there is no financing available, what do you think will happen with demand? It's going to start tanking. Next, we have the consumer tastes and preferences. Same idea. People like certain things. People want certain things that they used to not like before, such as now we're seeing modern colors, modern displays and outlays. They like the grays, the whites, the blues, depending on the people's preferences, demand will also fluctuate. Okay? Next, we need to understand the terms seller's market and buyer's market. Okay? That should be pretty self-explanatory in the sense that seller's market is a market where the seller has the control or the leverage. And when does the seller have control and leverage? Think about that. If you're a seller, when do you have the most leverage? Is when there's a lot of demand and there's not enough supply. Because if there's a tons of buyers that want to buy your property and there's not enough properties out there, now you're going to be in leverage or control. And you're going to say, okay, well, if you want my house and all of you guys want it, now you're going to have to pay for it. And the highest bidder is the one that's going to take it. So that's going to be more your seller's market. As opposed to a buyer's market is when the buyer has the control or has the leverage. And when does that usually happen? That is when there's a lot of homes available and not enough buyers. So make sure you understand the difference between a seller's market and a buyer's market. And again, this is the cyclical market that we're talking about, in the sense that usually, like whenever, for example, the pandemic, there was a lot of buyers because interest rates came down, not enough supply. So it was an there was a lot of there's a lot of buyers, but not enough supply. So it was a seller's market, meaning the seller had the control. Then over time, as interest rates go back up, as everything stabilizes, it should go down back to a buyer's market to then eventually come back up to a seller's market. But depending on the economy, depending on many different things, that is where we just looked at, where the government has an influence on the market. Okay? And then the last thing we want to make sure that we touch upon is vacancy rates. Now, normally I would go for formulas and things like that. I will go on the board. But this is such a simple topic that I'm just going to explain it here, in the sense that they want you to know the formula for occupancy rate and vacancy rate. Let's think about this logically, okay? So if you wanted to know, let's say you are thinking about buying a hotel or a motel that's got 10 units, okay? And you wanted to know its vacancy rate. What would you need to figure out and divide it by to get your number? So essentially, all you would have to do is, out of the 10 units, find out how many are vacant. Then from there, go ahead and divide it by the total units, which in this case are 10, and it's going to give you your percentage of vacancy. So for example, if there's 2 units vacant and 8 filled, divided by the total of 10 is going to give you 20% vacancy rate. And then in the same turn, the occupancy rate will be the exact same thing. How many are occupied divided by how many are available. So in that same example, if 8 are occupied out of 10, that would be 8 divided by 10, which is going to give you 80% occupancy rate. Guys, it's going to be as simple as that. Take whatever you're looking for. If it's vacancy, find the vacancy or the ones vacant and divide it by the total units. It's going to give you your vacancy rate. And same thing for occupancy rate. Find out how many are occupied, divide it by the total, and boom, it's going to give you your occupancy rate. And that is as hard as those will be. But ultimately, guys, that is the chapter. Like I said, it was going to be a quick one, a short one. As long as you know those terms that we cover, you'll be good to go for that chapter. Okay? So that'll conclude chapter 15, the real estate market and analysis. And I will see you guys for the next chapter. All right? We'll see you then.